And so, speaking of, Monument Hobbies, we painted this all with Pro Acryl, some of the new Wave 4 stuff. We began the sword last time, and we still got to do the interior of the sword. So if you want, I'll have all the VODs ready and curated on Patreon soon, probably by Monday. But we used our paintbrush to deploy a really simple cell shading strategy. Then we used the airbrush to blur it. Then we used the paintbrush to do the crossfade on these secondary planes. So the interior of the sword is just that base airbrush blur, and we still got to go in and cut in the crossfades. I'll walk you through that here. And then that's it. We're done. And then we're going to slap his ass on a base. So the first act of today's show is getting that sword finalized. And the second act, I'm looking for this base that I literally primed, brought down to the Beats lab. Did I put it over there like a hobo? Where the fuck is this thing? Oh my god. Okay. I'm sweeping. Looking. Nope. Okay. Oh, found it. Literally. Here we go. So this is the base I want to mess with right here. Got a little blue on it the other day by accident. Just hit it with a quick rattle can. So we're going to make this thing look sick as fuck. Okay. So let's see where we're at here. So I'm going to just do a quick reset just to get it back to basics so that we are all on the same page here. So we used one of my favorite paints, Sky Blue, which is, almost cyan. Okay. And so you can view the cyan as kind of the mid-tone if you want. Or Sky Blue. It's nearly cyan. And now I always put a little white down because those two work well together. Now the way you kind of re-maintain saturation as you desaturate the Sky Blue is a little transparent blue. So this is actually Wave 1 transparent blue. It's look how thick it is now. Like I've had this since the first day. But these will help in maintenance of saturation. And then you really start getting really clean cyans. And then I use a little black to get even darker right here. And so this is the sword right here. And I'll put a little flow improver down because that helps keep the tip of my little tiny paintbrush from getting too dry. Because what we're trying to do is maintain like sometimes an equilibrium of moisture, sometimes a really low moisture content, depending on what we're doing. But now we got to sneak in here. So what you'll see here is I've got a traditional tri-blend, right? Bright, dark, bright on that plane. Okay, now anytime I'm doing any type of metallic effect, I do a crossfade on a sword traditionally, but where they have a straight bevel, this thing has two bevel lines. So we're just using standard plane shifting protocol. It's bright, dark, bright, and that means on this plane as it shifts, it needs to be inverted, right? Dark, bright, dark. That's it. You just move around and do that, you'll be fine. Okay? So now we have the base, the flat of the blade already done. So we have to carefully move into this little frame here and invert the sequence. And it's kind of easy because it's already painted in the same spectrum. So what I'm going to do is just grab some black and some transparent blue and some sky blue and just kind of get a nice kind of puddle of darker blue kind of established here. And look how beautiful that blue is. So right now it's semi-transparent. And I'm just going to carefully, using the heart pull strategy, pulling straight back to my heart, I'm going to just carefully glide this darker makeup here. See where now it's plane shifting against that bright. I'll grab a little bit more sky blue in the sequence. Keep it semi-opaque. You see that it's not just changing the makeup so abruptly. It's letting a lot of the blue that's already there shine through still because it's not opaque. And let's see, here's the thing. On the lower plane, we might not even have to do anything because you have to like basically invert this guy to even see it. But I'll see if I can get something going here. It's a little tricky to be expected from that position. So what I'm going to do is, this is our brighter mix currently, and that's our darker mix. What I'll do is I'll split the difference between the two. Okay? And I'll work the zone where the two meet right here. And you see we're going to get a nice blurring effect right there. Very simple to kind of like keep straight in your head when you're doing it that way. Okay? So now let's rinse the ambient black and transparent blue off of our brush. And pick up the pure sky blue. And now we're going to be a little bit more aggressive here. You see, as we plane shift up against the dark center of the flat of our brush, or our blade, we got that shinier connection right there. Now again, I'm going to introduce a little white into that mix so it gets even brighter. And we're going to do an even smaller section right there in the middle. Okay? Press that down. Let's run it back to black plus transparent blue. Really low opacity mix here. And right here on the tip, we're going to just really darken it up. The closer to black you go, the shinier you're saying the object is. See that? Be willing to even put a little bit more black and blue in there. Right there. Let's get that initial puddle right here we were using. Walk off of that. And see, we're just going back through the sequence. Splitting the difference right here. Be a little darker than that. We've got to try to link a little bit better right here. And actually, what I'm going to start doing is shaping the line to be more diagonal like this. See that? Let's rinse that off because now we put black back on the brush. Thank you, Rushafel. Let's pick up a little bit more of that sky blue white mix, a little bit more in that pure state. And again, let's shape our line work right here. See that? Let that relax. Maybe get a little bit whiter, a little bit more opaque, a little bit less moisture. Using the tip of our brush, do little heart pulls right back to your body like that. So now what we want to do is we want to get a high opacity, low moisture highlight going, and we want to kind of frame everything. So make sure the moisture content is low, and what we want to do is just run our tracer technique, right? Which is the opposite of what we've been doing. We're going to try to glide on that bevel line with light brush pressure, using more of a horizontal diagonal posture. Just want to ride that rail. Hold your breath. Swing it from right to left, assuming you're right-handed. Like that. Skinny straight lines every time. We're going to get more white because that had still some sky blue in it. And this has a lot more white. And this is really where the shiny effect comes from. Is encapsulating those bevels where they catch the most amount of light. Now it's going to be a little bit trickier down here to actually access it with a true heart tracer technique, so you're going to have to use a heart pull very gently. And I think maybe right here we can get it. Turn right here. Pow, son. Now, the tricky part is going to be getting underneath it with what because it's not going to be easy to access. This is definitely something, you know, leaving the sword off would have been really handy, but that means you have to leave the whole arm off, which I don't like to do for my promos. I like people to be able to see the model the whole time we're painting it. So here I'm just going to do my best. Make sure we're not too wet. Light brush pressure, just glide that rail right there, just trace it. I'm being really gentle and respectful here just because I know this is a high risk maneuver right here. And see, just a little bit, you know, you only see a little bit of that line anyway, but it's enough. And so from this angle, I'm going to, because you can still see a little of that tip, I'm going to take the highlight right here, lower the opacity a little bit. This is the sky blue white mix. See, plane shift, right? Dark, bright. And I realized that I could see more of this than I thought. So now I'm going to introduce a little sky blue and transparent blue together. Just walk back. Templar, what up, brother? And so now we're going to take a little bit of that initial darker pile that we made. And I don't have to do like a super great job down there. I just have to get something happening. Okay. I'm going to split the difference, okay, again, back to some sky blue. Right there. Rinse the brush because it's got some black on it. Let's get some of the highlight, which has more white in it. Right there. Get some more sky blue. So now you know, when you look at the model, you can actually, you know, when you glance in, you see that I did more of the blade, and we did more of like a speed painting version underneath it in the area you really can't see. So let's take some black. And let's paint, reset the gem setting right here very carefully. We're using high opacity black. Low moisture, a combination of stippling and heart pulling. Rotate the model for a clean heart pull right up against the frame here. Sneak in right here from the top. And down here a little bit, you really, and funny, like underneath it, you really can barely see it unless you invert it like this. And this gem is going to be secretly the hardest part of the model. This like bonus gem on the inside of the sword that I didn't leave off. Because even painting it black is kind of a chore. Look at this. And you see how it already sharpens up the image, just having it not blue. Rinse it down. Sword. And Frozen Hobbit, you still there? Frozen Hobbit was the one who was advocating for the pink, which I'm not against. Like a nice magenta. It's just that with the colors of the model right now, magenta is not going to work, I don't think, with this red as much. I think the blue works because we're getting like a really clean cyan in there because I'm using the transparent blue and everything. You know what I think too? Because I did two diagonal, I think it'd be sick. To make sure there's a clean line right there. It kind of links up on this side too. But since we're getting a clean cyan, we're still getting the saturation. Frozen Hobbit. We're taking it off of like realistic metallic, right? Instead of like it's, you know, a blue steel. That shit's got straight cyan in it. So it's still magical, but it's like way more blue than it should be if we're trying to say it's metal. But we still are in the spectrum of colors, I think, that work well because we have this really cool sword and nice warm robes, warm metal accents, you know? So that's why I chose this. To Elise, thank you for the follow. Anonymous Inc., thank you for the follow. I think the pink sword would have been like just too much warmth. Okay. Gem time. So we've been just kind of lazy on the gems. So I'm just going to put a little bit of green down. And what I'm going to do is take this green, mix a little bit of it with this blue, kind of make our own light jade kind of color. Pretty much like a verdigris. And what we're going to do is just carefully paint the gem what you're looking at is a pyramid shape. Now, pyramid shaped gems are definitely a little bit trickier. If you want to do, if you want to get that kind of more traditional gem effect involved, they are trickier. You don't have to go this hard though. You could just paint them green and edge highlight the cross piece on the pyramid. Now, what I'm going to be doing though is I'm going to be doing miniature plane shifting inside the tiny gem, which is some tight stipples. It's not really that hard and you don't need to be that precise. And you can see here where we've done it, right? These like the kite pattern, it's like dark, bright, plane shift, dark, bright, as they move around in a pinwheel shape. So you don't have, like I said, again, you don't have to do that. You could just put the green down to the cross section, like that X in the middle. You're fine. So what we'll do here, now that we have this mix, is we'll introduce a little white to it. Maybe a little bit more blue. And I'm just going to pick the side right here. I'm going to go with kind of brushing in a highlight here on the bottom edge. See, so it's like dark, bright. That's one triangle. Now, see, it's dark on this side, so it has to be bright on this side because plane shifting rules. So I'm using high opacity, low moisture. Done. You can barely see what's happening here. But it's, again, it's bright touching there, so it means dark on the next plane. So bright is at the bottom. I'm not even going to do the one you can't see. Okay? So now what I'll do is I'll introduce a little bit more white to the mix. A small kind of tornado pattern highlight right here where I just make it fat and it's progressively skinny on one side. Right there. And now that I've got the background of the gem that you can barely see, most like done enough, I'm not even going to fuck with it now. So now we got to make it a little bit darker on the opposition. So we're going to grab some black into our original mix. And we are going to carefully brush some in right there, but I'm going to blur that, okay? I'm going to go back in time a little bit. Stipple along that tide line and blur it out, and then walk up our highlight scheme again. So it's dark, fade into bright. Pop. Now you can barely see the interior here. It should be dark right there. Okay, now let's rinse the brush. Let's pick up some white. A little bit of this final highlight color. Keep it high opacity, low moisture. And we're going to see if we can get a quick trace going here on the pyramid cross section. Hold your breath, swing it from right to left, right there. Rotate. Same thing as the sword. Plane shifting protocol. And while I'm sitting here like that, I'm going to get even more white on the tip of the brush. Again, high opacity, low moisture. Rotate. Okay, now the trickiest part is actually the part where you have to frame the gem out of its setting. So we have to do little heart pulls here. So very carefully, you need to draw a line connecting the base of the pyramids using the straight back to your heart strategy. And you want to leave that dark border intact. That's high risk right there. Might have to find a new approach, a new angle of attack. I think if I come in from the top here, which is almost impossible to see. Right there. Yep, got it. Nope, don't fight it. If it's not transferring easily, just reload the bristles. Right there. So we got that gem popping. That sword is possibly one of the more complicated swords. If you really think about, it's very simple, easy, plain design. Like it has nice, easy to access details, but it's a dual bevel, right? Instead of the normal just flat sword with one bevel, flat sword with a bevel, right? 1, 2, 3, 6 planes instead of 4. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 diamond pattern pyramid gems total. There's a lot of action for this, but these are all just effects, right? And I'm talking about the plane shifting. Deploying the effect is simply a procedure that, if you have access to the correct techniques like glazing and edge highlighting strategies and good brush techniques like stippling and heart pulls and tracers, it's easy to deploy. But if you haven't studied those techniques, you're going to struggle to deploy this effect. Metalovich, nice paint job, thank you. What's up? Welcome to the show. So, feeling pretty good about that. Now, the only thing I see that I have left to do is I need to kind of curate that skull. I think I slacked on it. So, let's get a little ivory out here. Now, what I need to do is maybe get a little ivory and white mixed together. And I'm just going to stipple. Okay, like semi-opaque, a little wet. I'm going to stipple along the seam right here. And deliberately let the highlighting be kind of rough and textured. And I'm going to introduce some black. So we're using more of a desaturated kind of gray ivory here. So this is this is kind of our shadow right here. I'm just stippling that in. Anywhere I think it needs to go. I'm going to rinse that off. I'm going to use some pure white here. And make sure we have a nice sharp highlight on some of the tops of things here. Just basic stippling with high opacity, low moisture. Okay, I'm going to grab some black now. And since I already had white on the brush, I'm going to just carefully stipple some highlights in on these power chords right here. High opacity, low moisture. I'm going to grab more white. Do a second round. Like that. Just so everything has been highlighted. Since I'm right here, make sure that thumb looks a little sharper. And that knuckle right there. Wow, son. Look at that shit. So, this was an example of straight up making the model black. No modulation with our airbrush. Using edge highlighting black is secretly easy techniques to edge highlight everything. Even the robe was just a basic workup, right? We used brown and reds and shit. And we just basically painted it. Made it slightly brighter, painted it again, made it slightly brighter, and finished off. Just doing less and less subtraction, right? No real blending occurred there. The only blending we did was in the non-metal metallic regions. But if you could do glazing, which is, I say is the first advanced technique in miniature painting, which means you understand how moisture behaves mostly. So we're able to basically just kind of coax the paint and blur it following plane shifting protocols and tri-blending, right? Bright, dark, bright, crisp. Bright, dark, bright, crisp. Bright, dark, bright. You see everything follows that rhythm. And on these shoulder fins, it's just dark to bright, crisp edges. Let it ride. So, and then on the circle here is porthole, bright, dark, bright, crisp. That's it. Everything follows that simple strategy of plane shifting. This sword is done exactly like this sword. You see? Bright, dark, bright, and then the outer bevels inverted. So, it's really one effect we're leaning on for the whole model. And it's honestly one of the easier effects to deploy once the mystery of non-metallic metal has been kind of taken out of the equation. So he looks pretty fucking ballin'. I think he's very menacing, very fucking strong. Heresy Labs. So we got to get him on a base that makes